Hello to all of our participants. I see they're trickling in, so we'll give it a couple minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you all for joining us. All right, I think it has leveled out a bit, so I think we can get started here. Thank you all for joining us for our panel celebrating AAPI excellence in college athletics. I'm Nicole Auerbach. I'm a senior writer at The Athletic, and I am honored to be your moderator today. And I know that we were going to get some incredible advice and insight from the administrators and coaches that we've got on this panel. We've got Jamie Boggs, the Vice President of Athletics at Grand Canyon University, Mike Harrity, the Athletic Director at Dartmouth, Mike Magpayo, the head men's basketball coach at UC Riverside, and Kalani Sitake, the head football coach at BYU. Very excited to get their insights and all of the keys to success that they've all had throughout their careers and that we can all steal for our future. So I want to start with everyone's origin stories and backgrounds of how you got to the place that you are now. So let's go in the order that I just introduced you guys. So Jamie, if you want to get us started and give us your background.
Sure. I was born here in Phoenix, and my parents moved here from Thailand back in the 1970s. My mom was a nurse at the time. Because of the war, my parents were able to come here because my mom was a nurse and there was a need for nurses. My father just finished medical school over in Thailand. They actually moved to a apartment down in downtown Phoenix, and an apartment that my mom described as a place that she would never want her children to live. They came here with a couple $100s in their pocket, a couple suitcases, and not much else. And so, my mom took care of us. When we were little, there was no laundromat in the apartment complex. She would walk around, walk everywhere, no car, walk to the grocery store, walk with two kids and a laundry basket. So that was the early part of our years that I actually don't remember because we were so young. They moved to our first house, which was just 3 miles from Grand Canyon University from where I work right now. And I actually don't remember that house either. What I do remember is a house that was in a nice neighborhood with cars, and we had everything we needed because I never had to endure. I don't have that struggle story. I don't have overcoming a lot from being here because my parents endured that for us. And instead they gave us great educations. They gave us relentless work ethic. They gave us a desire and an understanding that we're here to serve others and to sacrifice for others. And because of that, my sister, my brother, and I were able to be where we are today. And that's where I am at GCU, at a place whose mission is to serve and provide private Christian education across the socioeconomic spectrum. And it's actually, we serve a lot of families just like my parents were when they moved here from Thailand.
Mike, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole, and thanks for letting me be a part of this. And Jamie, thanks for sharing your story. Mike Harrity, Dartmouth. I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas. My dad was in the Army, met my mom while stationed in Korea, and have an older brother who was born in Korea. And then we grew up in Kansas City. And, three things were really emphasized in my family. A little bit of background. My mom, because of needing to work with her family, kind of food stand, didn't go beyond elementary school. My dad went to high school, but one thing, we always had a lot of books on the shelf. Education was always stressed to do something. My dad always said, go to college so you can do something you want to do, not just something you have to do. Work ethic was always emphasized, and curiosity, just learning about the world around you. So a lot of love in the home. We rented our home all throughout. And it's so unlikely that I'm an Ivy League AD. Like, it's not lost on me. It's only because of coaches and teachers and carrying, family along the way. I mean, I worked at Notre Dame, West Point, and Dartmouth, the last 3 stops, and I couldn't have got in academically to any of them. And here I am, so fortunate to serve in this type of role. And that's only through, I think, those values that were instilled in me very early by my parents.
Please ignore the sirens. They just popped up in Chicago. but I promise that they will stop and slow down. Other Mike, can we get your origin story and a quick primer on your background?
Sure. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I'm one of 5 Magpayo children. My parents came from the Philippines. Growing up, basketball is the Philippines' national sport. And so it was basketball or John Wooden books all over my house. My dad taught us in Woodenisms a lot. But I wasn't good enough to play in college. And somehow I fell into coaching, and I was a high school basketball coach for 10 years and also in the business world, and got lucky. And I sent a bunch of emails out in New York City. I was moving there to get my master's in real estate after my company survived the real estate crash in 2010 and came out the other side. And I got one response from a guy named Kyle Smith, who is now the head coach of Washington State, but he had just got the job at Columbia. And so that was I was also in the Ivy League for my first 4 years in college coaching. And somehow 10 years later, I became a head coach, and I am living the dream. And a lot of the credit goes to my parents for sure. They raised the 5 Magpio children to be extremely humble, but to believe in their dreams. And like I said, I'm currently living the dream. I've been a head coach here at UC Riverside for 3 years. And I love every second of it. And so I'm very blessed. Well, thank you for having me.
Kalani, your turn.
Yeah, my background, I mean, I was born in Tonga, Nicole, Tonga. It's an island in the South Pacific. And 3 months later, our family moved to Laie, Hawaii, in the North Shore of Hawaii in Oahu. And I grew up the bulk of my life. I have 2 hometowns, so Laie, Hawaii, and Provo, Utah. And so I lived out there, but our family moved to different places. We didn't have a lot growing up, but we had each other. So I lived in with multiple families in different places like San Mateo, in the Bay Area, in Oakland, and in LA, also in Salt Lake City. But most of my life I spent, probably, if you look at it, Provo, Utah, and Laie, Hawaii. And then I went to high school out for 2 years in St. Louis, Missouri at Kirkwood High. So Mike, I'm a show me guy as well. But I'm a big St. Louis Cardinal fan because I saw Ozzie Smith do the backflip, and I was in love with the Cards after that. So, but yeah, I actually grew up loving BYU because people in my neighborhood played for BYU, and BYU back then had a bunch of players. I mean, that the local high school would have been Kahuku High School. So a lot of the players that were in my neighborhood played for BYU, and I gravitated towards being want to be a BYU player. Also, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's my faith. And so I grew up idolizing BYU. I got to play here for LaVelle Edwards, who's a legend. And a lot of what I do is off of what he does culturally. I get a lot of credit for the things that we do in this program, but it's actually just revamping what he did for me when I was a student athlete. And then I played here. And then after I played, I went to Cincinnati Bengals. For a short time, I got hurt on a non-contact drill, which that kind of sucks. I had to retire, and I got football taken away from me, and it's the inevitable part of the game. Sometimes it ends when you don't want it to, unless you're Tom Brady for some reason, right? But everybody else, it ends, and the next best thing to playing was coaching, and I just never wanted to do anything else but coach. And I started my career at Eastern Arizona. It's a college. It's a JC in Arizona, in Thatcher, Arizona. I did that for 1 year. Was a graduate assistant here at BYU. After that, I got a full-time job at Southern Utah in Cedar City. Worked there for 2 years, and then I got the head job. I mean, I got an assistant job with Kyle Whittingham when he became the head coach, who was a BYU alum. And so he and I had a great connection. I worked for him for 10 years at Utah. 6 of those years as defensive coordinator, just loving the mentoring that he gave to me. I had other mentors like Gary Anderson, Norm Chow, people that I played for, amazing people. And I was there for 10 years, and I went to Oregon State for 1 year, and then I got the head job here at BYU, and now going on my 8th year. And it's amazing that I'm sitting in this spot because it's just, I am the product of a lot of people's hard work and sacrifice. And from family members to mentors that just came throughout my life. I just live every day with gratitude that I'm here, and I love every minute of my job.
Kalani, since you brought up some professional athletes. I wonder, when you were growing up and falling in love with sports yourself, who were people in sports that you looked up to, that you admired? Were there any folks that looked like you?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to go to BYU, is because the guys in my neighborhood were playing there, and they're older, and I was just like, wow, I was loving them. But I was a basketball player when I grew up. I mean, my jump shot was money. I thought I was going to play in the NBA, but then my body started to go like this instead of like that. And I realized really quickly that maybe this isn't the game that I should be playing, but I love it. But I always gravitated towards positive influences. So if you're talking about NFL, I really liked Walter Payton. I liked the way he played the game. That's why I wore number 34. I like that he smiled. I was just drawn to people that are having a good time, appreciated their time. And then I love people that play with humility. It's how I was raised. I was raised with this in the aloha spirit, that you do things, but you're I think sometimes people think it's laid back, but it's actually humble. And sometimes people think it's a weakness. It's actually a major strength. And so I was always drawn to people that had a lot of fun. That's why I like Steph Curry, the way he plays basketball. I like people that can shoot a shot and shimmy and the shot goes in. They will the ball to go in. I'm drawn to positivity. And that's what I was drawn to when I was a kid. I like humble players. I love Barry Sanders. I love guys that I felt like it's kind of who my family cheered for. Were all the humble players, and my whether it's my grandpa or my uncles or my dad. And so I kind of just followed suit.
Did anyone else want to chime in on people you looked up to when you were falling into sports, falling in love with different sports growing up?
I'll jump in. I think Bo Jackson was somebody that growing up in Kansas City. Go Royals, by the way, Kalani. I know you said the Cardinals, but we got you in '85. You might remember that the Royals won. But it was, I talked about curiosity earlier. I remember growing up, I played a lot of sports, and I would go to the library and look up addresses to write letters to athletes to ask them what their workout was and like what they were eating. And a lot of them would write back to me and just say, I do leg presses and I run and I do this and that. And that showed, I think when you grow up in an environment that's lower socioeconomic, the tendency is to not think outside of your neighborhood, but that really started to open up the world to me to say, oh, there is a world outside of here. And look, they're not so unreachable that they won't reach back if I come with a sincere, a question about how to get better. And I was like 13, 14, 15 when I was doing that. So, but sports was obviously something that was so inspirational. And I always, I think, aimed and aspired to do something in sport professionally one day, even though I couldn't wrap my mind around it.
I actually didn't realize I had this in common with Coach Kalani. I also loved basketball, and I thought I was going to play in the NBA. I didn't grow out, but I did stop growing at 5'3" when I was 12. So that dream did die, because otherwise I would be in the NBA if I was taller. Right? But anyway, so I was really interested on the business side of the NBA. And it's funny because, coming from a very traditional Asian family, it was, you're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. Those are my options. That was it. But it was actually my family's love of sports, and they were huge. Everyone at the time in Phoenix was a Phoenix Suns fan. That was like the peak of when the Suns were popular. But it was that time spent with my family, and that was part of what we did when we were together, was watching basketball. And so I wanted to be David Stern. My goal was to be the commissioner of the NBA.
Yeah, I agree. Just like Jamie, you're talking about, I think my family gravitated around watching Laker games, obviously growing up for us, and Dodgers. I mean, the people that I remember, Kirk Gibson, obviously in '88, that home run, and Wayne Gretzky when he got traded to the Los Angeles Kings. I mean, I used to read the sports page front to back. They couldn't get me to do my homework because I was always watching sports on TV. Back, I don't know if you guys, Prime Ticket was one of the channels, but random guy that I thought of that I'm just thinking, there weren't many here in Southern California, Asians. Paul Correa, when he was a half Japanese hockey player on the Anaheim Ducks, but there just weren't many. And when you grow up in Southern California, it's many Asians. And my high school was a melting pot, so you got a lot of Hispanics and a lot of Asians. And so it was a very interesting time growing up for me, just understanding that, not all Asians, I guess, at the time were into sports as much as I was. So
I want to, start diving into things that, some of these topics about around race and ethnicity, and we'll start with the coaches. So we'll start with Mike and Kalani. As you became coaches and decided that this was something you were getting into, when was the first time you thought about your race or ethnicity, your background? When was the first time it impacted your career or what you wanted to do? Maybe Mike, you want to start?
Sure. I'll start. I mean, I started working at Columbia in 2010, and I was at the director operations role, and on the Division I coaching staff, you got a head coach, you got 3 assistant coaches, and you have a director operations. And everybody wants to. The assistant coaches and coach can coach on the floor and recruit. Director operations cannot. And so about a year or two in, luckily somebody left, and Kyle Smith actually gave me a shot and promoted me within a year. But he had kind of let me know that, hey, listen, if you look around the landscape of college basketball, all of your, Asian peers are all stuck in that director operations role. And he kind of educated me and let me know that, why do you think that is, Mike? And I said, he's like, well, yeah, because the stereotype of that we are good administratively, we are good organizers, program people. Of course, anybody in that role wants to be an assistant coach. And it was really hard to get there. Again, I'm very lucky that a guy, Kyle Smith, gave me a shot, and which is why in 2012, he challenged me. He was part of the Jewish Coaches Association. He said, why don't you start the Filipino Coaches Association? So the joke was, I'm like, Coach, there's 2 of us. There's Eric Spoelstra and me. So he'd announced me at camp as the 2nd best Filipino coach in the world, Mike Magpayo. And so I started the Asian Coaches Association, just hoping, and there were only like 14 of us at the time. But that's kind of when I first looked at it and I said, okay, there is a challenge here. And I think we do have to build a community where we can support each other, network, hopefully build our platform where we can actually get to that role. And then just over the last decade, definitely seen progress, obviously becoming a head coach. And now there's a second one, half Japanese, Jace Coburn at Portland State on the men's basketball side. But it was very clear early on, 2010, 2011, that all of the Asian coaches were stuck in that director of operations role.
For me, it was a little bit similar to what Mike was talking about, but for me, it was more about the issue wasn't really, that's how I got into the games, that I started liking the people that looked like me that were playing in college football. And then you start thinking about yourself. When you see someone there, you start thinking, I think I can do this. This guy lives around the block from me, and honestly, he's just as poor as I grew up, and he doesn't have very much either. And so how did he get there? It piqued this curiosity in me, like what else is there available for me to do? And so in the coaching world, when I just love football, I just love sports. I mean, I could name, back when I was in high school, I could name the 12 people on the roster in the NBA. I could name all the teams. And I mean, I could do that with the starters on NFL teams. And I just watch random stuff for sports just because, I can't imagine that's the limited access that we had to the technology back then. But I was just more intrigued with the game itself, and then seeing other people that broke through. And then when I had a coach by the name of Norm Chow, who was a head coach, I believe he was the first Asian American head coach in college football. I think Marcus Freeman is a second, right? That I was just, he was a great mentor to me, but it was weird. We never talked about race or anything until I got into the coaching job and he said, listen, and it reminded me of my father and my grandfather talking to me, is that when you have these chances, when I was a player and I had a scholarship offer and I had a chance to go play in college football, my grandpa, my uncles, my dad just sit me down and say, hey, listen, it just means more because you're the guy there. Like everything that you do, all you speak for everyone else. So it put a lot of pressure on me, but it also put a lot of expectations. And when expectations are put on me, I actually do better. I wanted to be the son, the grandson, the nephew that they all expect me to be. And I came to school with a different type of mindset than everybody else. And I didn't want to be this guy that just didn't take advantage of his opportunities, because we grew up so poor, didn't have anything. I mean, my dad, my uncles, my grandpa, they would have been amazing coaches and amazing football players, but they didn't have that chance. Now I was acting for them. And as I started thinking about that, I got into coaching. Norm Chow sat me down. He said, hey, listen, you can't just be a great Polynesian coach. You have to be a great coach that happens to be from Tonga. That's how it has to be. And I didn't think about it. And so I just went to work, and I had that in my mind. And when I got hired, my job when I got hired as assistant was to bring people from the islands to the team. And that was it. But if you look at who I recruited, I brought other people from other ethnicities rather than just the one that I was expected to bring in. It got my foot in the door, but it allowed me to bring more people, and it allowed me to have this mindset of giving people the benefit of the doubt that never been afforded to them before, because I had a different, unique perspective. My background in growing up and going from Hawaii to Provo to living places like the Bay Area and LA and also in St. Louis gave me a different perspective than other people. And I can kind of give people a little bit more potential, give a little bit of air side on, hey, let this guy's we did grow up differently. When before it was all cookie cutter. They have 2-parent home, they do this, then that's who you want to sign. Now I get into the roots of it, and I can understand a little bit more because I grew up that way. And then I find myself, when I'm announced that I'm a defensive coordinator, that they say, hey, you're the first defensive coordinator of Tongan descent. And I'm like, I had no idea. Then I became the first head coach of Tongan descent. And I'm like, well, this is cool. And then I got to see Norm Chow again and talk to him. And he's like, doing it the right way. And I said, Coach, that's because of you, right? So we're given all these resources around us. I'm sorry for taking long about it, but man, it's just opening the eyes for these young people to see that they can be something. I wanted to be an NFL owner someday, right? Maybe I don't get that, but maybe my kids and my grandchildren might have that opportunity. But it's just really the sky's the limit for all of them. I just want them to be accomplished everything. When I grew up, I didn't think this could ever happen. So I lived every day with gratitude and appreciation because I can't believe this actually happened to me. And it's a wonderful life to be in. And it's you can accomplish so many things if you just listen to your wonderful family that raised you. And I still have that expectation. I want to be the son that my dad wants me to be, the grandson that my grandfather who passed away wants me to be. I want to be the husband that my wife wants me to be. All those things. It's awesome. And we all kind of grew up the way that we're expected to be a certain way. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think that was such a great answer as well about the value in bringing someone who is going to think about things a little bit differently. And when people ask, what is the value of diverse viewpoints in the room for hiring decisions or any decisions, such a great answer about why that matters and just looking at things a little bit differently. For Mike and Jamie, same question, just, when did you first start to think about your background and when did it first start to impact your career? Maybe let's start with Jamie, because obviously I think also gender, right? You're also walking into a world that is male dominated. So when did that all become part of your story?
Yeah, to be honest, growing up and even getting into my career, I never noticed it. And similar, I think, to what Coach said, my parents had extremely high expectations for me, extremely high. And at no point, it was never, you need to be the best woman, you need to be the best Asian, you need to be the best at what you do, and you need to serve others as best as you can. It was never pointed out to me. So throughout my career, I've had people across, male, female, of all different backgrounds support me throughout my career that were really critical to helping me and just being supporters. So it just never occurred to me. When it did occur to me was when I actually was in the chair. And it's because I received so many emails, just notes, messages from people saying, hey, I showed this to my granddaughter because I want her to see that she can be anything that she wants to be, that she can work in sports. Or just when I've had other people just send me emails saying, hey, it's just, I'm so proud to have you in this role and you're making us proud, things like that, that I realized the importance of it. And so, the impact that has had on me is that I am just much more intentional about being present, about being visible, and about being connected to others. By nature, I am not the center stage type. This panels, it's not naturally what I seek out to do. but I know how important it is. So, and just, there's never been a barrier for me through my career. But being in the chair and understanding how much the representation matters to that has been very impactful for me.
Yeah, to continue on that, so much of what's been said is resonates with me and is really inspiring. To build on what Jamie was saying is I was told early on by not only family but early mentors in my career that you have to make it undeniable that the door opens for you. So it means you got to work that much harder. And I didn't really assign that to my race or ethnicity or anything. It was just I'm the first person in my entire extended family to go to college. I know that there was not really the network of connections to progress. And I remember speaking to a dear friend, Nikki Moore. Dr. Nikki Moore is now the new director of athletics at Cornell, formerly at Colgate. It was over a decade ago. And I was asking her, I said, I don't really see any Asians who ascend in college athletics on the administrative side. And she said, there's one who is and will continue to, and there's many more, but there's one that I want to connect you to, Pat Chun. So I wrote to Pat, and I'll tell you, I do my research. I looked him up. It was like writing to a celebrity back when I was writing to those athletes, asking for their workouts. And he wrote right back to me. We traded emails and texts through the years. I finally got to meet him at Cal's a few years ago, probably 5 years ago now. And it truly was meeting, somebody that I admired, not just because he was a Power 5 AD, but because, his sense of humility, his sense of just generosity and presence, as you just said, Jamie, of being there. And he knew who I was, and it blew me away. Like, that's really confidence building for somebody who's wondering, I don't know what's next here, and to have somebody breathe, life into you and believe in you. So, and also now that I'm in the chair, so much of what you just said, Jamie, so many people reached out that I had no idea were even paying attention, and just said, wow, and we have, I think we have the most diverse cohort of directors of athletics in the country in the Ivy League. And we're really proud of that. And Vicki Chun was one of the first people to reach out to me, the AD at Yale. We have a lot of common friends. I didn't know Vicki well, but now we show up to AD meetings, and she'll call me cousin, call me brother. I call her the same. And there's just that connection. And again, it's so humbling and also inspiring to see what they've done for me, and then in turn what I can then serve others with.
Mike, we'll start right with you again on this next one, which is it's what you're talking about. I get asked a lot about being a female sports journalist, and I'm sure that some of this stuff is what you guys think about too, where you feel a responsibility to carry a torch, or what Kalani was talking about representing your family, representing people who look like you, but also just wanting to be good at the job and wanting your work to stand for itself. And how do you balance that? And what do you do to carry that torch, or to be that visible role model for other people, while also, not wanting to talk about this every single day and make it your entire identity, but also want to be known for good work that you do?
Yeah, great question. I think back to dear friend and mentor Jack Swarbrick, the AD at Notre Dame. He talks about this kind of paradox of leadership, that first, sometimes people who are most well suited for the leadership role don't necessarily see themselves as that. And you need to embrace that. You need to see yourself as that. And I think that's been what, in my 10 months in the job here, of just seeing now that I have that title, I'm the same person, I feel the same, but I know that I represent more people. So I'll say I have a long line of examples that I can share with you. That John Wooden was mentioned earlier. I wrote him a letter that led to a book on coaching. Like I like so many people who took time when there was nothing that I could do in return for them, that just gave of their time and their effort and their compassion and care. And so I have always that's imprinted on my heart and mind to always be available. So anybody who asks me for time, I give it. I'll tell you, when I got the invitation for this one, I happened to be with Vicki Chun, and my joke was, I clearly got this invitation because you couldn't make it. Like, I was the backup, which again, I wouldn't say it's a lack of confidence, but it is like, wow, so I am in that now, and to see myself as that and to embrace that. Again, with humility, and bring that spirit of humility, but also that spirit of service, as Jamie has talked so much about, to be readily available. So not quite sure what that platform looks like, but it's saying yes to things like this. It's saying yes to the grad student who says, hey, I've been tracking your career, and I'm I'm Korean or you know, I'm Asian, and I'd love to just get some time with you, and setting that Zoom up and making time for that young man or that young woman. Clearly, also, I'll tell you that at Dartmouth, the student athletes started the Student Athlete Alliance, Asian Student Athlete Alliance, and they asked me to be the advisor, which I was so honored to do. So it's things like that, getting involved in the affinity group on campus at Dartmouth, being asked to do those things is always going to be a yes from me.
Mike, you mentioned what your role is in connecting, you know, AAPI coaches in men's basketball. So wanted to ask the same question for you about what you're doing to give back, where you've seen that outreach continue to grow and the network continue to build. And also, again, like addressing just the pressure that you feel as representing other people who look like you while doing that.
Yeah, I you know, when I first was hired, my head was spinning, and I didn't know until my athletic director told me that I was first full Asian head coach. But I quickly, over the next 48 hours, realized the impact as I started getting emails and messages from Philippines and Thailand and all over Asia, just news agencies just trying to, and I was like, oh my gosh. So do I feel pressure? I think, well, I wouldn't say lucky for us, coach, but there's pressure to win no matter what. So that pressure is there. The pressure of representing, you know, it's funny, I got a text from a 305 number when I first got the job, and it was like, you know, so proud of you, Mike. It's time for you to represent. And like the main message was represent, and then it was Coach Spo. And I was like, oh my God, it was Coach Spo, and I had never met him before, and I was super excited. And he just, the main message was represent. And, you know, I think it's just really cool because I look to him as somebody that, oh, there's a possibility for me to be a head coach one day. There's a guy that looks like me that's done it. And so my mission obviously is to keep this door open and just bang it wide open for the next generation. And you're starting to see it. I think that Asian Coaches Association has been really cool because I do get calls from guys that were just like me and Mike, sending letters and I get nonstop. So I get all the young Asian coaches calling me, and it's really interesting because the spirit of humility is inherent in our cultures. So no question. If you had the 5 Magpayo children at your house, Nicole, we would have been the most respectful, polite. We would have been the best 5. I'm amazed, just because of the discipline and the way that my parents were raised and the way that they raised us. On the flip side of that, you know, I did have some business experience, and that did help me in coaching, because what I have to share with a lot of these young coaches, Asian coaches, is there is a certain aggressiveness you have to have. You got to get after it. You got to go, I don't want to say self-promote, but you got to go sell yourself, or you got to get turned down for jobs. You know, I got turned down for more jobs than I've gotten, you know, and that's one of the themes for me, and kind of sharing with these young Asian coaches. Then a lot of them come, they got a chip on their shoulder. It's like, I feel like I'm not getting the short end of the stick. And I say, unfortunately, and Coach Smith used to tell me this all the time, it's like, Mike, you're gonna have to work 3 times harder than anybody else. So don't compare yourself to anybody else on staff. You didn't play. The fact is, you are Asian American. Like, you're gonna have to work 3 times. And so one of the things I share with these guys, like, you have to be aggressive. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You know, I was shy growing up. What I'm doing right now, speaking to you guys or speaking in front of people, I couldn't do this. In high school, I was nervous my parents would make me call and order pizza, and I was nervous to do that. So just the way that I was raised, but I overcame it, and I just experiences throughout time allowed me to get to where I am. And so it's one of the things that I share with all the young Asian coaches is there is a certain aggressiveness you have to have. That's whatever business you're in, if you're in real estate or you're in, if you're a writer like yourself, or what coaching, you do have to have a certain aggressiveness to your approach.
I just wanted to mention that if you have any questions for our panelists, you can do the Q&A function or raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. We're happy to get to some questions, or I can read them for you in the Q&A box. Kalani, I wanted to see if you could follow up on what Mike was just talking about. I mean, you mentioned, you know, you get hired to recruit Polynesian players. How do you break out of that box and show that you can coach more than that and not just be labeled a certain, like just put in a certain box? And what is the advice that you give younger coaches who are coming from backgrounds like yours?
Well, I think the main thing is it's what my how I was raised, you know, and I have had such great influences in my life, but from men and women that took time to raise me, family members, you know, that were there for me. And I didn't grow up with a mother figure in my life. My parents divorced and my mom left, but I had a wonderful women, aunties and you know, grandmothers and people that are just willing to, and people in our neighborhood that just, it's a village mentality. They just wanted to see that I was loved. And so that happened all along the way. And as you start working through it, I think the key is for us is humility, just to find ways to get your foot in the door. And like what Mike was saying earlier, you have to hustle. You have to work, you have to be aggressive. And that's something that our young people, especially nowadays, they struggle with. It's like, hey, there's nothing wrong, for what Mike Harrity was saying, there's nothing wrong with being the backup plan or the second choice. Because I'm pretty sure I'm not my wife's first choice if you ask her, but I think it's worked out pretty well, you know? So I don't even know if I was the first choice for this job. I don't know if I was the first choice for any job that I got, but who cares? You have to just overcome the insecurity of this is, oh, you know, you just have to get over it. And like, I'm in the door. My foot's in the door. What am I going to do with it now? And it might be like, hey, I might have to get out. I wasn't comfortable speaking either, but you just have to find a way to just get out there. And the thing that was really cool for me is seeing other people that have broken through. I love that Spoelstra. I read about him like, man, he's himself. The way he coaches is actually how you can imagine. And I grew up I grew up in the Bay Area, so I have a lot of friends from Daly City, where there's a lot of people from the Filipino background, and Hawaii, there's a bunch of that influence. I mean, other than the food, I love the food too. I even love balut. Anyway, so but there's the thing that I loved about him is that Spoelstra is now the Pat Riley of our time. Like, isn't that amazing? And if you're looking at it from overall opportunities, it's just more just capitalizing on opportunities that you're given. There's a time that I was younger and I was a kid that there weren't a lot of African-American quarterbacks playing. And you see that just changed. It's like a common thing now. It's not even an issue anymore. I remember when Doug Williams won the Super Bowl, everybody's like, wow, this is so groundbreaking. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, I remember thinking, this is really cool. But look how much ground they've made up, right? From that time, that even for me, I was a great quarterback back in the day, you know, like I can't believe it took that long. There's Jack Thompson was throwing Samoa, and that was about it. There's only making a few Polys that played. Now you got Polynesians winning the Heisman Trophy, throwing the football in the NFL. I mean, it's now available for everybody, but it started with people like us that you just capitalize on your opportunities, and you don't worry about the insecurity of like, well, I wasn't the first choice or second choice and all that. You just say, hey, I'm in, let's go. I'm in the club, let's go. And that was something that was really helpful for me. But I was kind of, my dad was just like, hey, this is what you're given, make it work. It is how we all grew up. We weren't given a lot. We just know that this is all we have to eat. That's what we're going to eat. We're going to make the most out of it. I didn't have a mother growing up, but I got aunties and grandmas and everybody that's there to help me out, and next door neighbors that love me. And so you take advantage of that, and then you see what happens from it.
We've got a couple questions in the Q&A box, so I'll read one from K. Dan. Growing up with Asian parents and Asian parent standards, how did you break out of the barrier without damaging your relationship with your parents' expectations? What were your parents' reactions? Does anyone want to take that to start?
Yeah, I can understand exactly what that question means when I mentioned the traditional paths that Asian parents expect you to take, and I understand the disappointment, and I wish I had a great answer. My answer is I did what my parents wanted me to do. I went to law school. And I wanted to go to business school, but they said absolutely not, because that's not one of the traditional things that I went to law school, but I still found my path into athletics. I just found a way to do it. And I understand the not just the pressure, but also the desire to make sure you please them. And you do have to do it. I get, if you feel that pressure, I get it, but there is a way to do it. And there'll be people that understand and support it, and you will be able to find a way to do both. When I first started, when I had my first opportunity in pro sports, my parents didn't love it. They didn't know why I was doing it. And they would still tell everyone I was a lawyer. I'd be working, and they would say, she's a lawyer. Until I became the athletic director, I was a lawyer. But they're going to support you no matter what. I think you do know that. But I understand the pressure, and there is a way to do both. And please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect and discuss more. But I do understand that question.
Mike Magpayo, you mentioned working in business. Was that part of figuring out what you wanted to do versus what your family expected of you, or was that unrelated?
Yeah, no, very related. That's why I'm giggling listening to Jamie, because I was in the business. I ran a real estate company, and I coached high school basketball on the side, which is where the love came from. But yeah, when I made this choice to go start at the bottom and not get my master's anymore, and sell half my company to my best friend and business partner, and go make nothing in New York City in Columbia basketball, you can imagine what my two Filipino parents who had these expectations, and they thought I was successful in the real estate world already. You can imagine what they were thinking. But there's not a great answer. I'm with Jamie. I think that in the end, they're proud now. They go to every game, and gosh dang it, my dad's texts after losses are the worst. It's like, Dad, you don't think we work on free throws? We don't work on, the things that, but as my wife, we have a good solution. I text what I would respond to my dad if I could to my mom. but my point is, they're so proud. They're just so proud now, and they go to every single game and they watch every single game. But no, that moment in 2010 when I said I was going to be a director of operations at Columbia men's basketball, which they didn't understand, they were in shock. And I've been disowned a couple times. I mean, I'm sure a lot of Asians can understand from my mom, but in the end, they love us. They're so proud now, and you'll get through it. That might be the answer that Jamie and I are saying. You'll get through it. They'll come around.
In a similar vein, we got a question from Fumi Kimura. My mom supports what I've done in sports, but she asks me from time to time, but what do you actually do? Have you guys gotten asked that question? Maybe not. Maybe everyone's families understand what their jobs are.
Mine still define what I do based on what they think I should be doing. And it's fine. It is fine. So they especially when I was starting out in the pro world, they absolutely did not understand. And when I was working through compliance, when I was at Duke, I was a lawyer. So I was a lawyer. But again, I'm going back to what everyone was saying. They love you, support you. They might not ever understand it, but they'll always support you. So.
Mike, you were talking about just how diverse the Ivy League is in terms of leadership. And I imagine, the athletes that you're interacting with as well. So I'm going to ask this question in your direction, which is from Mark Pugeda. What role can college sports play in promoting diversity and inclusion of AAPI identities and other underrepresented groups? What can college sports do?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of, I was so moved and honored that the students who wanted to meet with me to ask me about creating this Asian American student athlete organization, and asked me to serve as the advisor. I was so honored by that. And I asked them what led them to that, not asking me, but just to lead a group. And they said, they talked about the fantastic community. And it's not just limited to Asian Americans, but anybody who is supportive of diverse perspectives and identities and experiences. So I think it's things like this. Like, what a fantastic panel. I found myself not ready to answer because I'm so enthralled with what the other panelists are saying, and people truly sharing the stories. I think not just the wonderful people on this panel, but look at how open and vulnerable and transparent people have been about what they're excited about, what they're fearful of in their life. And I think really just true, honest, raw experiences, because I think people connect emotionally to that, and they can relate to that, and hopefully it resonates. So I think more of this would be great.
Kalani, what does it feel like to have like the full backing and support of an administration when you are thinking about these issues or advancing and maybe hiring more AAPI employees?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, this works in everything in life, is communication. And so I think I've always been, sometimes when people give you the benefit of the doubt, that's really comforting, that's nice, but there's confirmation of communication is the best way to do it. And if there's a lack of communication, it's replaced with negativity. That's in every relationship. My wife and I love her. She's my best mentor, by the way. She's awesome. She knows my weaknesses and knows my vulnerabilities, but she also knows my strengths and helps me overcome all of it. But if in our great relationship, if she texts me at 8 in.the morning and I wait till 5 p.m. to text her back, it's not going to go well for me. And we have a great relationship. So that right there is evident that you have to communicate often. And there's no such thing as over communication, whether you're dealing with your parents and your job or whatever it is. The more you talk about it, you kind of like will it to happen. You know, it's just always on your mind. And I don't have a problem with asking people, when you look at something, that when there's an issue and there's a breakdown, it's usually because there was a miscommunication or lack of. And I hope that we can just try to find ways, especially nowadays, that we can make things better, you know. And that's for me, it always goes, it's weird. There's these complex issues. The answers are usually simple, right? So the answers and we're human, so we're looking for a complex solution to a complex issue. When it always comes back down, for football, comes down to the fundamentals. Did we do the fundamentals well enough? And did we focus on them well enough? And in life, business, whatever it is, it always comes down to the fundamentals. And that's for some reason, we don't accept it. You can tell people there's trillions of stars up in the sky, they believe you. But if you tell them that there's wet paint, you have to touch it just to believe it still. But knowing that, you just have to keep communicating over and over again.
Okay, we just got a bunch more questions. So just a reminder to send them in the Q&A box. We'll try to get to them. We have about 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we get to some of these. We have a question from Liz that maybe we'll start with the coaches, but certainly administrators, feel free to chime in. What helpful ways have you found to include the families of your AAPI student athletes in their college athletic experience beyond just the recruiting process? Is there anything that you have found that has worked well?
Well, I think unfortunately in men's basketball, there's not, I have not, well, I have a half Korean player, but there's just not as many in men's basketball. So maybe Kalani, you can jump on this one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think young people are just their curiosity is the key. So they want to learn about other people, other backgrounds. They want to learn about other cultures. I know this for a fact because we have it on our team. I mean, you have a bunch of guys on the team that want to do a haka because there's no one from New Zealand on our team. There's no Maori representation here, but they want to know the concept behind it. They want to know and then people are intrigued with storytelling. So the more you involve just people, it doesn't matter if you have that representation. They want to know, okay, who's this guy that's one of the best baseball players in the world that's pitching and hitting all the time? Like, what's his background? So they're already intrigued with that, and they want to. And if we open the dialogue and allow the curiosity to just keep building, then it becomes like they already know your culture. I mean, look at, if I'm thinking about the Filipino, Bruno Mars is one of the best singers of all time, right? It's like, so they want to know how Bruno Mars grew up, and you look at you look at the comedians who are comedians are brilliant, by the way. They're the best storytellers. And you look at the things that they come up with, and you're like, man, like Joe Coy, I can listen to that guy. He knows me, and he's talking about a Filipino grandma. It's like, that's my grandma, right? It's like, but you can connect to that. But there's also a lot of people that grew up here in the U.S. that, hey, I have family members just like that. Whenever they get that connection, the more you talk, the more you make it available to them. They're already interested in it. You just got to keep following through with it.
I mean, this one maybe for Jamie and Mike. In some groups, D&I pertains to other underrepresented groups. This question is from Roy Flores. Sometimes I feel that AAPI isn't always within those conversations as much as other groups are. Thoughts on that, and also just again, kind of how to, I imagine, how to increase efforts around DEI related to AAPI efforts.
Jamie, you want to start?
I was going to point the finger at you because that's a tough question, but it's something that I've thought about too. And I think we're in a great place from a diversity standpoint, in that it's on everyone's mind. It's a positive thing. It's not seen as a negative. It's a positive. And organizations, universities, companies, media companies, they understand the value of diversity. And I think the challenge is that diversity, there's not a definition, a one size fits all definition for diversity. It does depend on, the organization who's defining it. And I agree. A lot of times, I think AAPI, sometimes we're not perceived as underrepresented. Sometimes we're not perceived as minorities, regardless of the number, because of whatever successes, whatever it is. And it's true. As far as a solution to that, I don't have one. Maybe that's when I can flip to Mike and say, Mike, do you have the solution? Because I agree that is it's accurate. I guess from my sense, I just see as kind of guess coach's perspective too, is that I always look at things from a positive. We are in a better place than we were. We are making progress, and when I have conversations about diversity with our administration, with others, I always look at it and approach it from a positive standpoint. So progress, yes, there's what that comment is I agree with it. But we are at such a better place than we were, and I think because people on this call, these incredible coaches, this NACDA supporting an event like this, these are all the things that will continue to help help with AAPI and representation in our industry.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I don't have the solution for it, but it did bring up a lot of kind of personal emotion for me. I'd say that I just shared my origin story, and so often the assumption in my career has been that almost like the Asians are the model minority. Like you're raised by an affluent area by doctors and lawyers and all that, and I love my parents. They that's not what they were doing. My mom's a factory worker, and my dad had a lot of different jobs before getting out with the post office. And I'm really proud of that. I think a lot of my drive comes from that. So I always found myself like, but I don't want to have to say that, because then it looks kind of self-promoting if I say, actually, like, but you could just tell in the interaction. Then I can think of, I've had superiors who have literally made karate noises and said, wax on, wax off, while like we're all playing tennis, which today would get somebody canceled, but it was so hurtful, but I just smiled and worked through it, and I think, but I was thinking that's so inappropriate. And why did that person feel like that was okay? Because I happen to be, my mom's Korean. And yeah, so I wrestle with that. One thing that at Dartmouth, we're in Hanover, New Hampshire, which is a more rural area. We think a lot about not only how do we attract the most diverse pool of candidates, but also moving to inclusion and belonging. Like, and thinking if men and women don't see people that look like them, how do we still create an environment in which there's room for everybody and you're valued, and your perspective and your set of experiences and life journey is something that we really will add to the richness of this campus and what we're building on. So no solution at all. And I love what you said, Jamie. I tend to think through a positive, optimistic mindset, and it's like we're far past where we once were, but we're not where we need to be yet.
We are running out of time, so I want to kind of combine some of the questions we've got and just give everyone a last chance to impart whatever wisdom or hopeful message that you guys want. But really, the questions have mostly been about how to create an environment where there are diverse viewpoints welcomed, supported. How do you foster that? How do you welcome and be that person for AAPI colleagues? How do you provide support? Sorry, that is my dog whining. It's not like a dying monkey, even though that's what it sounds like, if you guys can hear it. But really just sort of like these takeaway messages that you might want to share about support, about the things that you guys are talking about where we need to be 5 years from now, 15 years from now in the AAPI space in college sports. So maybe Jamie, maybe you want to start here for kind of a take home message.
A couple things that I feel like have been very effective for us is it's going to sound counterintuitive because we're talking about diversity, but I tend to focus on more about what connects us than what separates us. Because when you look past all of that, you will have diversity if you find things that connect people. And so for me, just short answer, really focus on, again, positives, focus on what connects you with everyone, with the people around you, and you will have diversity if you focus on what connects you more. So short answer, for us, that's worked. We've for our department, we have gone from when I started here, there were 0 minorities or females on your senior staff. We've gone to where our staff is, I think, 3 diverse with 3 minorities, ethnic minorities, 2 females, and our executive team. We're 1, 2, and 3. We are all minorities, and so. But again, it's what connected us that really kind of makes our team strong. And we have all those diverse perspectives, despite the fact that we are all connected in a lot of ways.
Mike, I know you were just talking about the community in New Hampshire and you basically answered this question already, but is there any other take-home message for anyone who's watching?
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. And I'm incredibly inspired and humbled to be a part of this. This was awesome. Thanks for this opportunity. I'd say don't be afraid to reach out to those that are part of a community or at a level that you aspire to be a part of. I mean, I told you my Pat Chun story. It was like getting an email back from a celebrity. I can call him a friend now. He's somebody that, as I was interviewing for this job, I reached out to, and he was available within 4 hours. I mean, that kind of support, both seek it, but also in turn, give it. Be the person who says yes whenever you get invited to something, to speak on a panel, to speak to a grad student, whatever it might be, another professional. Like that's what I would leave with.
Mike?
Yeah, I love it because first of all, I'm taking tons of notes, but I'd say give back, be proud of who you are, but give back, because even last summer I lost all of my staff. They all got greater opportunities. And Coach Bolstra actually spent about an hour with me on the phone, and he said, it's effing terrifying, isn't it? Because, he had gone through situations like that. And, but he's kind of walked me through it. And he's like, it's going to be a great opportunity for you to grow. Now you're going to have to run the offense, or whatever the specifics were happening as I lost my staff. And then just, I said the takeaway message is the cream rises to the top. Your work will speak for itself. So again, it's kind of the theme that I always share with the young coaches. Like, don't get distracted by, like, I think Jamie's saying it, like, we're in a better place than we have been. Don't get distracted by what you're not getting or what's not happening. You're not wrong, but the cream will rise to the top. Go to work, hustle, like Coach said. And then when you do get to a place where you are in a position and you have a platform, absolutely give back and be willing to share your story with others.
And Kalani, the last word is yours.
Yeah, just so, I mean, it's an honor for me to be here. I learned a lot today, but it's things like this, getting together, talking about things, and finding ways to educate everybody. But I know that Mike and Jamie, you guys talked about you don't know the answers. Yes, I know the answer. It's be like you guys. Just keep working, keep going at it. And that's the answer. I'm gonna tell everybody on this that's listening to this, if you want to do it, just keep working. Right now, you look at all these, everyone's on the panel, and you think, okay, they accomplished a lot of things. I failed at a bunch more, right? And we just keep plugging away, and then we embrace each other and serve each other and strengthen each other, and that's how it works. And that's my takeaway. You guys are amazing. It's an honor for me to be here with you. I've learned quite a bit, and I just thank you guys. Aloha.
All right. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. This was an incredible conversation. Appreciate your honesty and your openness. And thank you to NACDA for putting this on. Thanks, Pat, for asking me to moderate it. And I hope everyone got a lot out of this conversation. I know I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.